Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. Getting you the kind of information that you need, not just the flash stuff, but in fact, he calls it slow facts. We're joined by Rob Morse there. Hey, Rob, how you doing?
I'm great, Tom. Thank you for having me on.
All right, so what is slow facts? I think I have an idea. What's this all about?
Oh, it's a blog I've been doing for about 10 years, and like you've been at it for decades, and now you're an overnight sensation.
Exactly. So the idea being, slow facts are not the ones that just flash out there. These are actually, you kind of dig for them, you got to find them, and you put them out there, and you put them in front of people in such a way that it's, number one, understandable, and number two, usable. And my take is that slow facts are the ones that are always going to be there that you can go pick up and you can use, and you can negate some of this nonsense that people are saying everywhere. Am I close?
Well, you're absolutely right. What's fascinating, what you do so instinctively, because you handle this material every week, our neighbors don't know what they can't see. Concealed is concealed. We had this wonderful report that just came out, and it told us how many of us there are.
Well, exactly. And I was going to ask you, you did the deep dive. I mean, whereas most people are not going to do this, because people, and you hear this all the time, I do. Well, yeah, I know there's concealed carry, but I mean, how many people really carry? And it's not really a big deal. And usually most of the people who carry end up having accidents and shooting the wrong people anyway, so we probably shouldn't have that. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you get, isn't it?
That's exactly what we get, and we need to say, I thought that when I just got my information from TV and the news.
Yeah.
But if you listen to Gun Talk, if you read Slow Facts, you find out an entirely different story.
Okay, so what is this report that you just did the deep dive into? Where does it come from?
It comes from a Professor William English at Georgetown. He's a sociologist. He's been in the data for a long time. What he realized, he did a survey similar to what Kleck used to do. His methods changed. Tom, this isn't the 1970s anymore. There are polling organizations that can go online. Instead of thinking we have 2,000 people sampled across the United States, 2,500 on a good survey, this guy came up with 55,000 people across the United States.
Ooh, that greatly increases the reliability of the data then.
We get people from it used to be, we think Hawaii's like this because we didn't get enough numbers. Now we go, no, we know. We can carry decimal places from Alaska to Puerto Rico. We know all about it.
Is this the National Firearms Survey?
Yes, the 2021 National Firearms Survey. It makes it sound like the government did it. In fact, that's just the title of the paper. Later, it's going to become a book, not my book, his.
Okay. All right. So I'm looking at your article here at Slow Facts, slowfacts.wordpress.com, and then you got this chart that you built, and I'm not going to take any of your credit for this thing. You found this and put it in an easily understandable way. When people say, "Oh, really? How many people carry?" Take the floor, man. Go with it.
I will. So with this, we asked, rather than guess from Nick's numbers, this survey asked. In a survey that's 10 times bigger than we're used to. Mm-hmm. Okay, 81 million. You and I guessed between 75 and 100 million. Good guesses. 81 million. Now we know. Oh, how many people are carrying? We knew that over 21 million had their permits. That didn't count constitutional carry states. Mm-hmm. Well, somewhere between 15 and 20. Yep, 17.4 million of us carry.
So
every day.
According to this data, and people responding directly to the survey, roughly 17.5 million people carry at some time, whether it's only in dangerous situations, sometimes, often. But the one that really got my attention was the category of always or almost always. You got 6.5 million people who are carrying every day.
Yes, and I'm going to tweak that number, Tom. Okay. That's the average of how many of us carry every day is 17.4.
Okay.
The total number of people who ever carry at all is considerably larger. But what does that mean? Let's pull the slow facts approach. That's 8%. That's 1 out of a dozen. one out of a baker's dozen.
Mm-hmm.
You walk into a coffee shop, on average, 2 guys in there are carrying. What was fascinating is, of course, there are places where that number is higher, but we're everywhere. We are everywhere. We're places we don't expect.
Well, and I've told people, they'll say, I can't imagine a world in which I end up having to stand next to somebody who's carrying a gun. I said, well, you better imagine it because it's going on every single day and you just aren't aware of it.
That's exactly right. What was fascinating out of this study, too, you and I think, and it's been hunting season, the joke, the largest standing army in the world are people who got their hunting permit to go hunt in Pennsylvania, right? You've seen that on Facebook.
Yeah, I've heard that one, yeah.
Well, that's not quite right, because there are more gun owners in California and New York. More gun owners, not just more people, more gun owners than there are gun owners in Ohio and Pennsylvania.
Huh.
That was surprising. We don't hear about them.
No.
We're everywhere, even if we're oppressed.
Oh, I have to share the story with you. Quick story about that.
Yeah.
I'm talking to a producer at MSNBC, and Keith is talking to me, and he's interviewing me, and he says, he said, well, I don't know anybody who owns a gun. I said, well, I don't know anybody who doesn't own a gun, but here's the deal. You know a lot of people who own guns. The only difference is where I live, people feel free to talk about it. He says, oh, no, I'm in New York. I'm in Manhattan. Nobody I know owns a gun. I said, okay, fine, go with that. He calls me 2 weeks later, Rob. He says, Tom, I did your survey, and I didn't know what he was talking about. I said, what are you talking about? He said, half the people I know in Manhattan own a gun, and I have no idea.
Yeah.
I said, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. The beauty of this survey is we didn't guess, we asked. We're everywhere. Okay, now what do we do with that?
Well, hold that thought, because I want to take a quick break and come back, because one of the things we got out of this also is how often do people screw up? The people who carry, we got millions and millions of people carrying every day. How often do they screw up with it? Hold on, Rob. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. Where's the data? Everybody always wants to know, well, yeah, but where's your data? Well, there are some folks on the gun side who actually go get the data. And generally speaking, when you go get actually real data instead of made-up data, like the Gun Violence Archive, a gun ban group that puts up phony stats about mass shootings, it's all bogus nonsense. But it gets picked up by the media because they are, in fact, a lot of them are simply the PR department for the left. But one of the guys who's actually going out and drilling down and finding you, and I do mean you and us, the information we need is Rob Morse. He's joining us right now, talking about one of the more recent pieces here. Rob, you talk about all these people who now are carrying, 17 million people on average carrying concealed generally. I think this is pretty much mostly concealed, isn't it?
Yes, almost all.
Okay, so when you go, like you say, you go into a store, there's 24 people there. Chances are at least 2 of them are probably carrying, and just on average, could be a good bit more depending on where you are. So there's an awful lot of people carrying, and along with that, and you've been watching this as long as I have, where we had every time a state passed concealed carry, they said, "Oh, blood will run in the streets," blah 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 blah. There will be, same old. Same with constitutional carry. They just go into the files and pull out the same stupid things they said 20 years ago about concealed carry. It didn't happen then. It's not happening now. When we have 17 million people out there carrying daily, I think we would know if they were shooting up the world.
We would, and in fact, we know they're not. Because, when somebody makes a mistake, you can't hide it. Everybody sees it.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, we needed to compare it with something, Tom. We know that police officers at least know the laws. We know they're pretty scrupulous in not blaming them because everybody's watching them really, really closely. If they even get close to a line, someone will accuse them.
Sure.
Well, it turns out, they're 20 plus times more law-abiding than the average guy who barely knows the laws. And we're between 3 and 6 times more law-abiding than the police.
Wait.
Because
go back and do that over again. I want to make sure people just picked up what you said. Say that again.
Okay. We know the police are more law-abiding than the average person.
Yeah.
We're more law-abiding than the police. Turns out we went and got that carry permit, and we are afraid of getting in trouble. We're afraid of getting in a conflict because we know we brought a gun to it. We're about 60 times more law-abiding than the guy who Gets a DUI because he didn't want to call a friend.
It's interesting because I remember way back, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement did a survey of concealed carry holders, and they said that the average person who has a carry permit, who's carrying, is about 100 times less likely to commit a crime than the average person walking down the street, which means that, when a person walks in carrying a gun and has a permit, that person is 100 times more law-abiding, or in your case, the stats 60 times more law-abiding than the average person, and actually several times more law-abiding than the police officer going by.
That's right. And we've got that data. The numbers vary, Tom. We got it in Florida. We got it in Texas. We got it in Michigan. You know who we tried to compare gun owners to?
Who?
Married Japanese men.
What?
That is the most law-abiding segment on the planet. And depending on the year, come on, we're geeks, right?
Yeah.
We look at everybody on the planet, and depending on the year, concealed carry holders are right there with the safest demographic group we can find on the planet.
Okay, I'm not surprised. I believe you. I'm not surprised, and you did the deep dive. You got the data. So what do we do with this information, Rob?
Well, okay, and you hit the nail on the head. Because concealed carry is concealed, our friends, like your producer in New York goes, no one has a gun. It doesn't matter what gun owners do because there are none of them. And we go, no, it matters a lot. Because we have to think back, how often are the police there to capture a criminal? On average, a criminal's going to commit about 20 crimes before he finally gets caught. They run into us more frequently than we know. And what else was interesting, we almost never have to press the trigger. 80% of the time, you and I scream, stop, get out, I'm armed, I've called he's already left. Okay.
Right.
Great, that worked out. That's the rule, not the exception.
Right.
What was fascinating about this report is they said they undercounted defensive gun uses and people who carry. They admitted it. They were wonderful scholars. Tom, have you ever been, I know this for a fact, you've gone hunting and you didn't use your gun. Maybe you were trying out your buddies. It turns out, you're staying at a friend's house, you didn't have your gun, they loan you one. It's a child under 21, let's say, a 20-year-old. She might be married with 2 kids.
Right.
But unless she was over 21 and said she was a gun owner, we didn't collect any data from her. And we know those people.
They didn't show up at all because of the bias in the data collection system.
And it's not a perfect sample, but they were honest enough to say, all these people, you traveled and you're not a gun owner, but you defended yourself. A lot of boyfriend-girlfriend situations there, right?
So what you're saying is the numbers are actually even better than what we're looking at here in terms of the number of people who have guns, use guns for self-defense. And a lot of people never report if they used a gun for self-defense simply because, as you say, they point a gun at the bad guy, he turns around and runs off, and then they go, okay, end of problem. I'm not calling this in because I don't need the grief.
Here's what we will discover. More versions of this report will come out year after year, I hope. You and I know that there's a huge problem of assault on and near campus. Those are typically gun-free zones. We've disarmed a young, vulnerable segment of our population, either older students who are there or young staff. You're a 22-year-old, you're back at school, either taking a class or working at the university, and you can't carry. When we see that they're able to carry, these stats are going to get even more convincing.
Fascinating. Rob, thank you so much for doing this thing and for all the things you're doing. I'd like for people to start following you. And is the best place to find you is the slowfacts.wordpress.com?
Yes, the articles on firearms are typically carried at AmmoLand after that.
Okay, so AmmoLand you can find too, and just look for Rob Morse, M-O-R-S-E. Thank you for what you're doing. Please keep doing it. It is great information. I call it intellectual ammunition that we can all use in the fight to support and protect and expand the Second Amendment.
Thank you for all you do, Tom.
Thank you, Rob. You take care.